Welcome to the Sports Podcast that will put you in the zone all the time. Welcome to Pack Sports Zone with me, your host, Peter Clarke. And what's going on, guys? We're here for another episode of Pack Sports Zone, and just like we've been doing for the past couple of weeks, it's going to be a little bit different. Aren't going through all the sports. Even though the big news from last week or the week before was regarding CM Punk and him showing up on the show, we already had a SummerSlam show before that. So we've had a lot to do between then, and we will eventually get back to talking all sports, but right now it's a lot about football. And got two interviews coming with you this week. The first one was Carlyon, who writes who is a reporter for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And then after that, we will be skipping across to the West Coast as we talk to Gilberto Manzano as he covers the San Diego Chargers. Wow, the Los Angeles Chargers. So we'll be getting to him a little bit later in the show. But first, let's just get right into it. Let's get to get Hayes on the phone, and we will get that interview as we talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars. And now joining me on the show is Jaguars reporter from 1010XL 92.5 and the co-host of the Frangie Show, Carlyon. Hayes, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Peter. Good to be with you.
And I just want to jump right into it and talk about how this Jaguars team has kind of progressed over the past few years. I mean, we're talking about 3-4 years ago, they were in the AFC Championship game. They were probably a kind of a blown call away from going to the Super Bowl. And now you can see everything you saw people start leaving with Ramsey and everybody start leaving. What has happened to this team over the past couple of years? What broke down from them? Why couldn't they sustain the success of that year?
I think it was the perfect storm of a lot of incompetence and just bad fortune. It all ended up working out well because now they have Trevor Lawrence, but the dominoes that had to fall to go from, as you accurately pointed out, a team that was very close to a Super Bowl appearance to becoming a 1-15 team with 15 straight losses to secure the number one pick. Discontent in the locker room started. Guys like Telvin Smith, Jalen Ramsey, Yannick Ngakoue, for a variety of reasons, fell out of favor with the franchise. He had started there. Blake Bortles obviously never was able to recapture the promise that he showed in the 2017 run. And it led to them making a massive investment in Nick Foles. He breaks his collarbone 11 snaps into the opener after really having an outstanding training camp. Gardner Minshew comes in, gives the franchise a little bit of life, but then the league sort of figures out how to stop him, and he can't react to the counterpunch. And so they basically languish, and the defense falls apart, and you get to a 1-15 team. And, if there's any sort of positive, it's the fact that they were so bad that it led to the hiring of Urban Meyer, who I don't think takes the job unless he knows he's getting Trevor Lawrence. And the biggest thing was, obviously, the Jaguars had the number one pick for their first time in their franchise's history. That what we believe was the perfect year to have it, with a player like Trevor Lawrence in the draft.
Now, you mentioned Lawrence. Now, what are the sense that you're getting for fan expectations for Lawrence and the team this year?
I think the fan expectations for Trevor Lawrence are incredibly high, maybe unfairly high, because I think everybody is expecting him to basically step into the league and be a quality starting quarterback right away with a push to elite quarterback status in his second, third year. Very fast trajectory, sort of what we saw, out of Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, even though those guys had to wait and Trevor won't. So the expectations on Trevor Lawrence is that he's going to be, arguably the best player on the team almost immediately. The expectations for the team, I think, are a little bit more tempered. I think most fans believe, particularly after the season-ending injury to Travis Etienne, that you're probably looking at, if they can go from 1-15 to, I'd say 7-10 with the new 17-game schedule. If they could get to 7-10, a 6-win improvement, I think most people would look at that as a big success. I thought when the schedule first came out, they had an outside chance of maybe going 9-8 if everything broke right. Because I like the way the schedule sets up for them in the first month. And a young team, you get off to a 3-1 start, you have some momentum, and maybe that could carry them through. But I do think that they haven't had the kind of training camp that I thought they would. I thought Travis Etienne would go for 1,500 yards of offense from scrimmage, rushing and receiving. So to lose him, I was higher on him than some, but I really thought he was going to be amazing as a rookie. So to lose him, I think now you're probably looking at an expectation of somewhere between 5 to 7 wins.
And you mentioned Etienne because I was very high on Etienne during the draft too, and I thought he was going to be having a very good year also. But he did have a running back last year in Robinson who had over 1,000 yards rushing. He had over 1,400 yards from scrimmage. Do you think Urban, now that, the second guessing obviously with the injury, but do you think he's regretting a little bit taking a running back in the first round?
I don't think so. Obviously it's easy now to second guess it with the injury, but they needed playmaking. And, we've seen it. I know people say don't draft a running back in the first round, but the stats show that if you're looking to make an immediate improvement, drafting a running back in the first round does usually lead to a significant bump in your win total the next year, which makes sense. Those guys are obviously, they're touching the ball so many times. They have such an impact on the game if they're good. So they needed a playmaker. They needed a home run threat. Urban Meyer was very vocal about they would have selected Kadarius Toney, the receiver out of Florida, had he been there. The Giants selected Toney, so the Jaguars took Etienne. So it was clear that they needed some playmaking, and that's what they were going to target after selecting Trevor with the first pick. So I don't think they regret it. The biggest thing with Etienne is, with it being a Liz Frank injury, will he be the same guy a year from now? And that's what they now have to worry about. Early indications are that he should be, but it's, as you know, that's still one of the more unknown, unpredictable injuries that we see in sports, is that Liz Frank on a running back.
Yeah, and he was so explosive in college, so you just got to hope that he does come back. But whether you're a Jaguars fan or not, you hate to see young players get injuries like that. What other rookies have stood out in camp? We talked about Lawrence, and obviously we talked about Etienne. What other rookies are standing out in camp so far?
I think I like what I see out of Tyson Campbell, the second-round corner. He has been beaten for multiple touchdowns in the preseason, but he sticks to his guy. He still is trying to, I think, figure out how to play the ball. And I think that's something that'll come, but he's so big and he's so fast that it's taking great passes to beat him. Now, this is a league where you will see that, but I like what I've seen out of Tyson Campbell and his ability to really stick to his guy. So I'm excited about Tyson Campbell. Walker Little, the second-round left tackle, showed some good things early on in training camp. Then he struggled in the first 2 preseason games, which was probably to be expected because he was injured and then opted out. So he really didn't play football for 2 years at Stanford. But he played much better in the preseason finale. So he's this year, I think the ideal plan is that he's the swing tackle, and Cam Robinson at left tackle and Juwan Taylor at right tackle hold up. But he's shown some good things. Andre Cisco, the safety, in the third round. I think he's a starter sooner rather than later. He's flashed, and so I think they've got some intriguing pieces in this draft. Luke Farrell, a tight end that played at Ohio State, started to come on in the second half of camp. So if you're in a really deep, dynasty kind of fantasy league, Luke Farrell would be worthy of note, because the Jaguars really don't have much at tight end with Chris Manhertz and James O'Shaughnessy as the 2 veterans. And then obviously Trevor Lawrence, who has been spectacular. That's why it was such a joke that Urban Meyer had this, farce quarterback competition going on between him and Gardner Minshew for so deep into training camp. I can understand it for, a week or something, but, to have it going on for 3 weeks where they're rotating, snaps with the starting offense day in and day out. I don't think that was the wise thing to do, but Trevor's been great. And, I think you started to see him find a little bit of a rhythm against Dallas in the preseason finale. So Trevor's been outstanding.
Yeah, and you can see it was really funny when you heard that quarterback competition, and obviously Minshew has his group, he has his following where they're going to support him no matter what. He just has that type of aura of people to follow him. So you had people actually taking this serious and saying he's going to beat him out. So it was when they did end up trading him, it was very interesting to see the reaction from the fans and everything, because he really was like a rock star down there, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was, and deservedly so. I mean, he was incredibly charismatic, and he's a fun player to watch. He's a real, gutsy, smart player. He just is limited athletically, and you then compare him to a guy like Trevor Lawrence, who, as you well know, has every skill set you could ask for in a prospect, in terms of arm, delivery, mobility, size, frame, all that. And so, it just wasn't really a fair fight. But Gardner Minshew, yeah, I mean, he certainly had fans here. And I think the general consensus from everybody is, you wish him best of luck in Philadelphia. I do think he'll play. I mean, I think that the pick gets bumped from a 6th rounder to a 5th rounder if Gardner Minshew plays in 50% of the snaps in 3 games. I think with a 17-game schedule, that happens.
Yeah.
So I don't think we've heard the last of Gardner Minshew in this league. I don't think he's like a legitimate starting quarterback, but I think he's the kind of player that is going to play, a decade in this league. And, usually guys like that have, multiple opportunities to come in and get some spot starts. So, yeah, I mean, it was a very unique chapter here, and one that I think everybody enjoyed to getting to watch him play and getting to, see his personality and now, pulling for him in Philadelphia.
Yeah, it definitely was cool to see how he actually energized the crowd a little bit there. Now, for the wide receiver group, has anybody stood out there? I mean, obviously we want somebody to stand out as number one, whether it's DJ Chark, whether it's Chenault. Like, has anybody stood out there?
Really it's been Marvin Jones and Chenault, I would say, have been the two, because DJ Chark has been recovering from a broken finger, so he really hasn't practiced for a couple of weeks. And even in camp, of the 3, he was the most quiet, which was a little bit of a surprise. DJ Chark has gone to a Pro Bowl, still a young player. And it wasn't that he was playing poorly. It was just that Laviska Shenault and Marvin Jones were way more active. So, I think it's really hard to predict how that is going to go. I think Marvin Jones is Trevor Lawrence's security blanket, so I think he's got a great chance to lead the team in receptions. He's recovering from an AC sprain in his shoulder, but Urban Meyer believes he'll be fine for the opener. Chark is supposed to be fine for the opener. And Laviska Shenault is a player that they're going to do a lot of quick game with. And you saw it the other night, how physical he is a runner after the catch. So they really do have 3 unique options, because Chark is more the speed guy with the frame that can go up and get the 50-50 balls. Jones is sort of the savvy separator route runner. And Chenault is more of the, bubble screen, quick pass kind of guy, let him run, get him in space. So with Trevor, I think Marvin Jones early on will be the guy. It'll be interesting to see as the year plays out how that changes, because Trevor likes to take shots downfield. So I still think yardage-wise and touchdowns-wise, it'll be Chark, because just more to his skill set. But in terms of receptions, I think Chenault and Marvin Jones are going to have plenty on their end as well, because, again, you now don't have a running back on the team that is much of a threat to catch a pass. We'll see what Jaguars do with the top waiver claim. Maybe they try to improve that once the cuts are made this afternoon. But but other than that, they don't have much at tight end. Yeah. So I think the 3 receivers have a chance to have all really big time numbers, because there's not a lot of presence of the tight end or running back at this point in the passing game.
Yeah, and you do expect them to be coming from behind a lot, so it's going to be a lot of passing from Lawrence.
Right.
Now, probably the biggest question, the $100 million question is, what is it going to take to turn the losing culture around? Because they've been top 5, top 7 pick for pretty much every year, except for that 1 year about 3-4 years ago. What is it going to turn? What needs to change the culture there?
Well, Urban Meyer is doing, all he can. It's by far his primary focus. Maybe even you can argue too much so, but then to your point, it's been so poisonous for the last couple of years since the deep playoff run. But it does. The camp has a collegey feel. The program he's running has a collegey feel of play for the logo, and the dynamic there is going to be interesting because this is professional football, and these guys are playing this game for a check now, and for a lot of them that's the primary goal. It's not so much the team that they're playing for. And I know as fans, we all wish it was, that way, but that just isn't the reality of the NFL. So if things aren't going well early on, I think it's harder to get veterans to buy into the, hey, play for the logo, play for your teammate, and be willing to do that. So that's the challenge. And again, that's the challenge every NFL head coach faces. It's just a question of how do they want to approach that. Urban Meyer has really tried to put the pay element out of what they're doing. Basically say, forget about, payday on Tuesday. Let's worry about, being the best that we can be. Let's worry about leaving a legacy that when you come back here, you can say to your family, hey, look at what we built here. This team had never won, and we came and won big. It's so far it seems to be going fine, but it'll be interesting to see if they do struggle more than I think what people are expecting. If it is like 3-14, how strong will that message continue to be with the players in the locker room? So it's a big challenge, but it's one that Urban Meyer certainly is taking on head on with a unique approach, and we'll see if it works.
You've been very, very fair with your judgments in terms of predictions for the team and how they, and I see fans even get at you for that and saying, why are you covering the team if you're going to be negative? You've been very fair with what do you think the team, realistic for the team. Do you think this team is headed for another top 5 pick next year?
I don't think so. I say that if they don't have a lot of depth. Certainly if something happens to Trevor, then they should tank and get the number 1 pick again, and then hope that somebody falls in love with Spencer Rattler or Sam Howell, and they can trade a treasure trove for trading out of the spot. But assuming Trevor Lawrence is healthy for the vast majority of the season or all 17 games, I'd be surprised if they're in that range. I think they can get to. I really do think the schedule sets up well. I think they have a chance to be 3-1. Now it ends up after the bye, but if they're a young team, if they go to Houston on September 12th and get a win, then I think that can do a lot for them. Then they host Denver, who's got a great defense, but probably isn't going to put up a ton of points. So you feel like you've got a pretty good chance there in Jacksonville. Then they host Arizona. We'll see about that. They go to Cincinnati, which is winnable on a Thursday night. So, they could obviously lose all those games, but there is a chance they could win 3 of those games. And then I think the momentum, and with Urban Meyer and Trevor Lawrence, then I think it becomes kind of interesting to see what they can be. If I had to guess, I'd say they'll go 7-10. And guesses, that would put them, what would you say, like somewhere between probably 9 and 11?
Yeah, I was going to say around
the draft order. So I could see it being the top 5 if they get some more attrition, particularly if that attrition includes Trevor Lawrence. But if they're relatively, healthy, if they don't just get decimated, I would think you're looking at somewhere between 6 and 7 wins, and I would think that would put them outside the top 5.
Gotcha. Now, I just want to get you one more quick question before I get you out of here. Correct me if I'm wrong. Are you a Braves fan?
Well, kind of. I'm not much of a baseball fan anymore, but when I was a kid, and I'm 45, so this is the 1980s, but when I was a kid, I was a big Braves fan with Dale Murphy, and when the Braves weren't very good. Then I was a fan in the 90s when they were good, and then they went on strike, and I never really regained my interest after that. So I pull for the Braves, but I don't lock in like some of my friends do. So when they tweet something about the Braves, I'll sometimes react to it. It's almost a running joke because I'm a major bandwagon Braves fan now, but I do have deep roots as a Braves fan from as a kid.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I'm a Braves fan too, and I'm around the same age. I'm 41, so I've kind of gone through the same thing where I was a fan of them late 80s. Like I got into them with late 80s, and then they became good and won all those series, and then they got bad for a little bit. So I'm the same way. They're right now they're holding the division lead out of nowhere with people injured. Though, do you think they can make a run this year?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it seems like the Mets and the Phillies have basically put it on a silver platter for them. So went down for the year, I was like, well, that's probably it. Because I think at the time they were like 2 games under 500, and that's sort of where they've been hovering for like 2 months. And but I know they lost last night, but they're going through. They did well against the Giants, and if they can maybe get one of these next 2 against the Dodgers, then you come out of a tough stretch. And so yeah, I mean, and once you get into the tournament, as we know as Braves fans from back in the day, like. There was a lot of times we'd go into the tournament thinking, oh, we've got the best team, and we'd, have a bunch of disappointment outside of the 1 year. So my guess is they'll win the division and then probably be knocked out early, but who knows? Hopefully they can make a run.
Yeah, I agree with the same thing. But I want to thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate you giving me your time, and hopefully you'll be able to come on a little bit later on in the season. Just give us a quick update on the Jaguars.
Sure thing, Peter. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Thanks. Once again, this is Hayes Carlyon, Jaguars reporter of 1010XL 92.5, and also host of the Frandy Show, co-host of the Frandy Show, 3 to 6 p.m. Thank you, Hayes.
Thank you, Peter. Take care.
All right. Take care. And I want to thank again Hayes for coming on the show and giving us an update on the Jacksonville Jaguars and letting us know about what he expects for that team, which is a very young team right now. It's going to be very interesting to see what Trevor Lawrence could do with that team. Usually when you want to turn around a franchise, it begins with the quarterback and the offensive line. Now, they still need some work on that offensive line, but they definitely have the quarterback to do it. I've watched Trevor Lawrence since he started out in college, and he's been top-notch player. He's always been a winner, and he doesn't like to lose in his team, and you can see it even with his couple losses in college. You can see how much it bothered him to lose. So it's going to be interesting on both sides. One, how fast can he turn them around? And 2, if they do lose early, how does he react to it? Because he's not used to it. So it's going to be fun to see what Jacksonville do. I mean, obviously, I don't expect them to be over 500 the first year, but they're in a bad division. I mean, other than the Titans, you got the Colts who are up and down. You're not sure what's going to happen with them. Obviously, you got Houston, who may be the worst team in the league right now. So you got a chance to at least build a little bit with him. So Trevor Lawrence, I expect to have a good year. And even in fantasy football, he's one of my kind of sleeper guys. Him and Joe Burrow, I really like it as a second tier. I don't want to say second tier, but after you pick your initial starter, having one of those guys as your backups with a chance with their ceiling, I think is a great thing to do. So, just my little fantasy football tip if you haven't drafted yet. But I know most of you guys have drafted or you will be drafting very soon. Then just go and listen to the fantasy football show from last week. You'll be able to get a lot of insight on all that stuff. But moving on now, I also am about to speak now with Mr. Gilberto Manzano, and he is with, like I said, the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, let me just get him on the phone real quick. Okay, and I'm happy to introduce Gilberto Manzano. He's writer and reporter for the Chargers, the NFL. He does boxing also. He writes for the OC Register and also the LA Daily News, as well as SoCal News Group. He actually has a great podcast, co-host of the podcast on Compass on the Beat. Welcome to the show, Gilbert.
Hey, Peter, thanks for having me on. And 2 things I liked already off the bat. You went by my full name, Gilberto. Yeah, I know my byline on my Twitter says Gilbert, so I appreciate you giving it a shot with the O at the end. Mm-hmm. And you gave my podcast a shout out, and you tried to say, pronouncing Compass. So you're Peter, you seem like you're a risk taker, and I love that.
Definitely, I'm trying to do whatever I can. But let's get right into the Chargers, and let's get right into the big name, obviously, Justin Herbert, the quarterback going into a second year. What are some of the expectations
for him in this year too, and how is he looking in camp so far?
Yeah, no, with Justin Herbert, maybe it's weird, but I've kind of gotten used to his high level of playing, and now I know some of my fellow beat writers were getting on me, but I started noticing, okay, like, man, he had one interception or two interceptions, like that's not Justin Herbert. I'm like, I'm setting the bar so high for the guy, like, wait, it's practice, it's training camp, this is where you want to get your mistakes out. So I see him in practice, trying to try new things, which you want to do as a quarterback, but man, that cannon of an arm, he's throwing lasers out there. I know some of the wide receivers are saying, man, you got to get used to a Justin Herbert fastball. But the other thing, too, like maybe he has a few more interceptions this year. Well, first of all, it's crazy to think that last year he was a second-team quarterback. So he was kind of lighting up the second team. And while he was being the backup to Tyrod Taylor, we all know the story. Justin Herbert came in week 2 and ended up winning Rookie of the Year. But now this training camp, he was facing the first-team defense, so they were going at it. As we know, the Chargers defense has Derwin James, who's healthy again, Joey Bosa, Chris Harris Jr., an emerging linebacker duo with Kenneth Murray and Drew Tranquil. They drafted Asante Samuel Jr. There's some playmakers on this defense, so they were going at it, and that's what you want to see in training camp for Brandon Staley's team. He's the first-year head coach for the Chargers, but man, Justin Herbert looks the same to me. He's going deep. He's taking deep shots. He has good chemistry with Keenan Allen. I feel like if you're the opposing defender, how do you stop Herbert to Keenan Allen? Like those guys are two of the best at what they do. So that's gonna be a pretty great duo again. And he likes his tight ends too. Like they got Jared Cook. He's a little older, but man, he's been throwing him a lot. Donald Parham Jr., 6'8" tight end. He goes to him a lot too. So I think the thing for Herbert is that he has an abundance of weapons, playmakers, and they also revamped the offensive line. They added Corey Linsley and they drafted Rashawn Slater. So the weapons and the protection, you got to assume Justin Herbert's going to get better. But man, that rookie year was so good. Yeah. How do you top that? The bar has been set so high. So I know a lot of people are expecting a regression, and maybe to a point because the running game was pretty terrible a year ago. So you would like to be a little more balanced, but then again, you got Justin Herbert throwing dimes. Maybe you want to let him loose.
And you mentioned earlier about Brandon Staley being a first-year head coach. How is camp different now compared to how it was with Anthony Lynn last year in the previous couple of years?
Yeah, it's a little tricky because, I feel like Anthony Lynn didn't get a fair shot to have one more year because of what he did with Justin Herbert. He had a great year. But you start noticing why it didn't really work out. Maybe they got out a year early, which is better than a year late. Yeah. Brandon Staley is very detailed, and this franchise, the Chargers, have kind of not done well with details. That's why they lose a lot of close games. Like I feel like if you watch any type of Chargers game, you know what you're gonna get. It's gonna be an exciting game, and then they're gonna lose in the last few minutes with a missed field goal or a bonehead play on defense, or who knows? Something weird always happens in these Chargers games, and I feel like for the last 2 years, I kept track of how many one-score games they've lost. I feel like at one point they lost like 20 out of 24 games that were one-score games. So, in this NFL, it's about situational football and the details. And Brandon Staley seems like that's his biggest focus is situations. What do you do in a 2-minute drill? What do you do before halftime? What do you do when you need a field goal? What do you do when you're down, 6 points and there's 10 minutes to go? So every type of situation that you could think of, that's what Brandon Staley is doing. Yeah. And also on special teams was just horrendous a year ago. They were probably the worst special teams unit of the last 20 years. I keep seeing all these stats, analytics saying they're by far the worst special teams since 2000, so the turn of the century. So I've seen a lot of extra detail, a lot of time focused on special teams and training camps. I think this coaching staff, to kind of sum it up, they're focusing on the little things, and I think that might help out the Chargers, finally to win some close games.
Gotcha. And you mentioned some of the running back earlier about the running back situations, and obviously you have Austin Eckler coming back after the injury last year. You got Justin Jackson, you got Joshua Kelly. How do you see that playing out between those three? What type of situations do you see each back playing in?
Yeah. Now that we know the 53-man roster, there's actually one more. Larry Roundtree. So there's a crowded backfield for running backs. The Chargers usually tend to take 3 on their 53-man roster. They went with 4, and I can see why. I know Justin Jackson's been hurt, but he's very talented when he's healthy. And Justin Jackson quickly won over the coaching staff early in camp. But Larry Rountree's a rookie. He got drafted by this coaching staff. They want to see what he can do. They had Joshua Kelly. They drafted him a year ago, but you can't give up on Kelly after 1 year. And obviously Austin Eckler is your playmaker, so he is your workhorse. But I think there was a lot of focus on the offensive line a year ago, but the running game wasn't great either. And I know that kind of goes hand in hand. If you don't have blocking, you can't find holes. But at the same time, you got to make it work. And these running backs couldn't make it work a year ago. So I think that's another thing I feel like this coaching staff is going to focus on is making sure the running game is on par. So, Justin Herbert's not doing everything by himself. So that's why I feel like, one of the biggest surprises might be that the Chargers are a little more balanced because they want to be efficient. They want to, be great in the trenches, and that's where they revamped the offensive line. So I think this running game should be much improved, especially if Austin Eckler is healthy. He was banged up a year ago, and for the fantasy people who had him a year ago, they weren't too happy with Austin. But I think Austin is healthy, and he should be a big-time playmaker in Joe Lombardi offense.
Moving on to staying on the same side of the ball, moving to the wide receivers. Mike Williams, I've always been very high on him. When he came out of Clemson, I thought he was going to be really good. And a lot of people will say he's been a big disappointment, especially for where he was picked in the draft. I've heard a lot of things about them trying to move him around a lot this offseason. What are some of the things about him? And also Josh Palmer, rookie in the 3rd round, does he look like he's going to be the number 3 wide receiver after the top 2?
Yeah, no, that's the thing with Mike Williams is people love him in fantasy football. He makes great catches in the 4th quarter. He's a big body receiver. I mean, you look at a guy like that, you think the touchdown machine. Like a guy that's 6'4", almost 250 pounds. This guy should be getting every target in the red zone and getting 10 touchdowns per year. But it hasn't been that case for Mike Williams. He has had some injuries. He's had a deal with Keenan Allen taking a lot of targets, Austin Eckler, Hunter Henry. I think that for Mike Williams, it should be a breakout year because it's also a contract year. This is the last year of his rookie deal, and I feel like he has a lot of motivation. He's making good money this year because they picked up his 5th year contract, but he has no more years left. So I feel like he's gonna have a big year, and I'm expecting a good year for Mike Williams. Now for Josh Palmer, he really surprised me. He came out of nowhere. People were saying he got drafted a little too high in the 3rd round this draft. But Josh Palmer looks like a playmaker. He kind of looks like what I just told you about Mike Williams being a big body receiver, and I don't know. I think for him, maybe the biggest thing is getting over some nerves because he's had a couple of drops. But man, when he's not doing that, he gets open quickly. He's physical. A great jump ball guy. So I think for Palmer, once he gets out of his rookie nerves, he should be good.
Gotcha. Moving to the other side of the ball real quick, Derwin James, you mentioned that he's coming back from injury. He obviously missed the entire year last year as he got hurt in camp last year. One, how is he looking returning from that injury? And 2, how does the combination of him and Adderley, which I thought would be a great safety combination, how are they working out together?
Yeah, you said Derwin and Nas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing that Chargers fans have been wanting to watch for the last couple of years because Nas Adderley got drafted in the 2nd round of the 2019 draft, and everybody had visions of Derwin James and Nas being, Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas, and having like kind of like this remake of the Seattle Seahawks Legion of Boom, but Derwin James has been hurt. Nas Adderley dealt with some injuries, and kind of a rocky year for him last year as well. But Derwin James is healthy. Now Nazir Adderley is going to year 3. This could be the year where we finally see, okay, this is the potential, or we kind of saw for this safety duo. And you would think having Derwin James is going to help you out if you're Nas Adderley. So I think for now, this is a year to really show like, okay, were you a good second round pick, or what's going on here? So I think for this year, for now, that is going to be a big year, and the coaching staff likes him, so they're going to give him a chance. But this team needs Derwin James. That's why they haven't been winning games the last 2 years, because he hasn't been playing. And if you have Derwin James, they have a strong chance to make the playoffs, because he is the heart and soul of this team.
Yeah.
And he plays so many roles for you. Cornerback, linebacker, edge rusher, safety, and he's the leader of this franchise. Like, I know usually it's a quarterback, Justin Herbert, but man, they everybody really respects Derwin James, and they're just happy to see him out there. He made it through training camp without an injury, so I think it should be a monster year for Derwin James, because when I watch him play, that looks to me like the same player from his rookie year, who was an All-Pro at two positions.
That'll be awesome to see him out there playing like that. I was also very high on him when he came out of college. And I've also said that you mentioned how he's been like one of the leaders of the team and how everybody likes him. On defense, I always said the safety is the guy who, if you want a top-tier defense, get a top-tier safety. So I think that really helps out their defense.
Yeah, no, definitely. Especially this type of safety, in today's NFL, the one that kind of does everything, or kind of the enforcer. I know people give Jamal Adams a lot of flack with the Seahawks because they call him a box safety, but this guy's an extra edge rusher. Like, he could get you a bunch of sacks as well, and also also cover as well. But I think Derwin James is a much better coverage man, and maybe it's a toss-up when it comes to edge rusher, Jamal Adams, but you need these guys that can play multiple roles, and the ones that are giving an extra blitzer can only help your cause.
Yeah, and the biggest thing about somebody like a Jamal Adams, he's a great leader, and you could tell that coming out of LSU. He was just a leader among that group. So you like to have leaders on the field. That's always a good thing. But moving on to some of the other rookies, we already talked about Josh Palmer in the third round. We mentioned Rashawn Slater and also Asante Samuel. How are they adapting right now? I've heard some good things about both.
Yeah, the rookies. I think they're gonna play a big part in this Chargers team, because it's funny. Usually, when you're beat reporters, you look at the roster and you start screaming for about 3 months. These are the biggest needs for the Chargers, and they usually kind of go the other way around. I guess this year the needs were really obvious. You needed a cornerback, you needed a left tackle, and then boom, the first two picks are left tackle and cornerback. And also, sometimes it doesn't shake out the way that these reporters kind of see it, because the draft is so crazy that maybe there's not a left tackle you like, there's not a cornerback you like. And for the Chargers, it broke that way. To have Rashawn Slater at the number 13 pick without you having to trade up for a left tackle, I thought Penei Sewell and Slater are going to be gone in the top 10 picks. And somehow the Cowboys passed on Slater at 12. And it worked out perfectly for the Chargers, because Slater looks to be like he is probably the best tackle in this draft. And that's only because the Lions are doing something silly of putting Penei Sewell at right tackle when the guy's been playing left tackle. I don't know that. I don't get the point of that at all. And he's been struggling at right tackle. Where Rashawn Slater, people said that he is not big enough to play tackle, but he dominated, Chase Young as a left tackle. He dominated other top edge rushers who are on the NFL at left tackle. And the Chargers wanted him as a left tackle. They never considered him being a guard. And then when you see Rashawn Slater at practice, he looks kind of small. You start thinking, like he when you look, he sat next to Bulaga, he's not that big.
Yeah.
And then you watch him in one-on-one drills, and he's going up against Joey Bosa, and he's making Joey Bosa look kind of, human. It's like, whoa, this guy's really good. But after a while, I think Joey Bosa was like, you know what, enough with this rookie giving me making me look bad. He turned it back on, and they were going at it. So I think Slater looks good. It's going to be rocky for Asante Samuel Jr. because I feel like a rookie cornerback, it might be the hardest position to kind of learn, besides quarterback. Because these quarterbacks are so good, they go after the new guy. They go after the rookie, the guy who was kind of new, can't react as fast. And I think Asante's going through that. I think what he's doing right now is relying on his athletic ability, his ball hawking skills, just making sure he can recover quickly enough when he gets beat. So you see a lot of that, but you do see the potential. He had an interception in one of the preseason games, and you saw that he got beat in the play, but he quickly recovered and he caught the ball. Like, you got to catch the ball as well. when it comes your way, you see a lot of these DBs drop them many times. So I think the potential is there for Asante. I think he'll probably be the third cornerback. In this group when they go into nickel or dime packages, you will see Asante there with Chris Harris Jr. and Michael Davis. But for Chargers fans, they should really be patient with Asante because there are going to be some growing pains and he's going to get beat a couple times. But I think if you're patient with him, I think it's worth the wait.
So we see all the potential and the talent on both sides. We obviously talked about Justin and how we expect him to be. What's going to be your record prediction? Can this team make a playoff run?
Yeah, and the reason why I keep sticking to that is because Derwin James is on the field and he's healthy, and hopefully he stays that way because, man, he's fun to watch. And as a football fan, not as a reporter, I love watching Derwin James. And I think a lot of people could say the same thing. So if he's out there playing multiple roles for you, being your leader of this team, because it's not the same when Derwin's not around. So I think that's kind of been one of the biggest missing parts of this team the last 2 years because he's only played 5 games in the last 2 years. With Derwin James, I think they're a playoff team. I don't think they can beat the Kansas City Chiefs just yet. They still have one more year, I think, for them to kind of be real threats to them. So I think with Derwin James on the field, I think they win 10 games. And I think that's enough for one of those wild card spots. I know it's 7 now, so you have an extra team to get in.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, I'll get you out of here on this, and it has to do with a tweet you put out about 10 or 11 days ago. Bianca Belair is still my champ. Now, I'm a wrestling fan.
Yeah.
Are you a fan of Chuck Belair or are you a fan of WWE and wrestling overall?
All right. You're a boxing guy. You know we make fun of people who are casual boxing fans.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, I'm more of a casual wrestling fan, WWE. Yeah. But I grew up on the Attitude Era, so I'm still on YouTube watching Rock promos, Stone Cold promos, and DX promos. So I love that era. But my co-host on Compas on the Beat, Fernando Ramirez, still catches a lot of wrestling. So I've been trying to catch up as well. Mm-hmm. And man, when I really caught up at WrestleMania, and I'm like, hey, who's this Bianca Belair? She's really good. And like, man, she has these bigger arms than Hulk Hogan. So man, she's buff out there and like she's dominating. And when she became champion at WrestleMania, I was like, okay, I'd say I am one of her biggest fans. I'm trying to get her on my podcast. We'll see if I get her one day. I know she's big time right now. Mm-hmm. But I don't know what happened at SummerSlam, which I thought was a great card as well. Mm-hmm. I know Becky Lynch is the man, and she's just as big or probably bigger than Bianca Belair. Not for me, but I know how it is at WWE. There's a favoritism, and it kind of seemed like a really awkward scenario where like they asked Becky Lynch last minute, "Hey, we need you for SummerSlam. We don't have Sasha out here. Can you jump on?" And then Becky's like, "I only come on if I win the championship." And that's what we kind of saw the whole that whole weird sequence. But I don't know. Hopefully, Bianca Belair gets that championship back because I thought that wasn't fair. Yeah, she kind of became a superstar in the last 5 months, and then out of nowhere, she loses the title.
Well, yeah, the good part about that is you had a lot of fans crying out for the same thing because it did seem like it was unfair. It seemed like it was put together, like you said, at the last minute because of the night before CM Punk came into a rival organization with AEW. So it's almost like WWE had to pull something, and it seemed to backfire a little bit. So I don't know if it's going to work out. But I just wanted to say I appreciate you guys coming on the show. Hopefully you can come back on the show a little bit later on during the season, and we can talk a little bit more Chargers football.
Yeah, no, Peter, appreciate you doing this podcast, and I'm glad that we kind of got to combine some boxing, some wrestling, and football. That's what I talk about my podcast. So I appreciate you having me on. It's been fun.
Oh, it's no problem. I'm happy to have you on anytime, and we'll talk. We can talk wrestling, we can talk boxing, we can talk football. So thank you for coming on, and have a good day, Gilberto.
Thank you, Peter, man. All right, take care.
All right, take care.
And once again, I'd like to say thank you to Gilberto Mendezo and helped me out a little bit this week with trying to get some more teams from top writers on to talk about different football teams. So much that next week there will be a special Labor Day show of Pack Sports Zone, as I'm going to get a couple other people on for next week and see how that goes. We'll be having the interview with Darren Urban of the Arizona Cardinals and maybe another special guest that we're working on over the weekend that we'll try to get that going. So Tune in, keep tuning in. We'll still have our normal Thursday show next week, right before the game of the night as the NFL season kicks off. But I'm your host, Peter Pacman Jones, and we will catch you later on Pack Sports Zone. Peace out, guys.